So welcome everyone. I'm Tim Severyn, the Social Mission Director for Bellarmine Chapel. Introduce my colleagues here.
I'm Mickey. I am a senior at Xavier University, and I am the social mission intern at Bellarmine.
My name is Claire. I'm also a senior at Xavier, and I work with Mickey and Tim as one of the other social mission interns.
So to get started, who are we? Bellarmine Chapel is located on Xavier's campus in Cincinnati, Ohio. We reach approximately 850 families, and we have parishioners from over 60 zip codes. We're committed to social mission through partnerships with Xavier, such as our intern program, and with the local community, and we'll talk about that later on in our presentation. Okay, so to start off, we're going to give some background information on climate change and racial justice. So our group is focusing on coalition building for food insecurity and environmental justice. So it's important to know what these mean, but also to know how they're interconnected. So with climate change increases the impact of injustices, such as economic racism, et cetera. People of color are more likely to experience or to have a negative impact with climate change, such as pollution. For example, Flint, Michigan, 54% of the people in Flint, Michigan are Black or of minority base. Food insecurity usually happens in urban areas. And like stated before, Flint, Michigan urban area is predominantly people of color. And then small scale community agriculture, industrial agriculture is one of the leading causes of greenhouse gas emissions in the US. Small scale agriculture reduces harmful emission and increases food access. So if we look here on this map, for every blue dot stands for every white person, and then every green dot is for every Black person, red for Asian, orange Hispanic, brown for Native American. So if you see the white area, if Tim can move his cursor, this white area down here, that is that's industrial. That's where that's factories. And if you see, it's lined with green dots, which are minority based. So similar to Flint, Michigan, where it's minority based in these industrial areas, that's the same for Cincinnati. We have industrial areas, and that is where minorities and other Black and brown people reside. So to dive deeper in, I want to define food deserts and food insecurity. So food deserts is defined as urban areas where it's difficult to buy affordable and good quality food. A consequence of a food desert is food insecurity. And food insecurity is defined as not having a reliable source of food due to income or economics. And based off the map on the previous slide, we can see that how segregated the city of Cincinnati is. Cincinnati is the 5th most segregated city in America. And now if we move to the next slide, we're going to go take a closer look in Cincinnati. So the darker the purple, the more people of color are in that area. The lighter the color, the more whites in the area. The blue markers are chain stores such as Walmart and Kroger. The red markers are smaller stores such as like a Dollar Tree, Family Dollar. And the gray markers are individual stores that you'll only find in that area. As you can see, there are more red and blue dots in predominantly white neighborhoods, and more of the green markers, the individual stores in the minority-based neighborhood. As you can see, further to the suburbs of Cincinnati, there's less and less markers, but that's where you get the more, it's more predominantly white. And if we go to the next slide, we can take a closer look at Xavier. Okay, so Xavier is located in between a couple of neighborhoods, Norwood, Avondale, and Evanston. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at Norwood and Evanston. Evanston's population is approximately 9,000. about 28% being white and 70% being Black, while Norwood is almost the exact opposite, with 80% being white and 12% being Black. If we look at the vehicles per household, about 26% of Evanston's population has 0 vehicles, while the population in Norwood, only 14% doesn't have any vehicles. And that's important because if you see in Evanston, there are only there's only 3 grocery stores in the area of Evanston, which makes it difficult for the residents to be able to purchase food. But if you look at the city of Norwood, they have over 15 grocery stores within their city. And that's important because Evanston and Norwood, it's less than 2 miles apart from each other. It's about 1.9 miles away from each other. If you want to go to the next slide. So, like I said, Evanston and Norwood is about 2 miles apart from each other. Evanston is a 30-minute bus ride both ways and a bus transfer just to get to the local Kroger, while residents in Norwood can simply walk to one of their 15 stores in their community. So essentially, due to the lack of reliable transportation and grocery stores in Evanston, the residents live in a food desert, which may result in food insecurity. I'm going to go ahead and give it off to Tim, and he's going to take a deeper look into how Bellarmine and Xavier are hindering food insecurity by local gardening.
Thanks, Vicky. And I'll just point out too, even those 3 stores in Evanston, I've been to all 3, none of them have fresh produce in them. So you really, if you want to eat anything fresh, you're going up to that blue dot in Norwood. So the Fresh is Better project was founded in 2017 and is now wrapping up its 5th growing season. From its inception, the project took what is a collaborative asset-based community development approach, ABCD, focused then not just on the challenges that Mickey outlined, but upon the assets or strengths that are really internal to that community. So when we were starting this project, we had a number of meetings, both formal and informal, with members of the Evanston community through the community council, the leadership of the Evanston Rec Center, some of the churches in the community, and parishioners from Bellarmine Chapel, our church on Xavier's campus. And there were a few assets that we really identified that we thought would serve this project well. The first was the presence of anchor institutions, the rec center being probably the hub of those, but also the churches and the public school Evanston Academy all served as bases for the kind of programming we were imagining. Second, there was a strong sense of community cohesion. In the 1960s, Cincinnati put I-71 straight through Evanston, tore out the business district of Evanston, and really decimated this Black community. But they had a community council at that time already, and rather than fall apart, it reorganized and advocated for a new form of development in their community. And so even today, there's a lot of community pride in Evanston, a lot of community cohesion. So that's another big asset there. And then finally, probably the biggest asset was the existing land arrangements and housing stock in Evanston. It is largely single family homes and duplexes, meaning there are yards, lots of space to grow food in. If we were a little bit more further into the urban core with apartment buildings or high rises, that wouldn't be the case. But this neighborhood really lent itself to growing food. So all of that to say, after a number of community meetings, we founded Fresh is Better. The mission you can see is right here. The mission is to promote a healthy Evanston community, growing food and friendships. Those are the 2 sort of prongs of this, food and friendships, and our goals reflect that. The first one is around the friendships, to break down barriers between neighbors, building up positive and empowering relationships across the Evanston community through gardening and food education. And then the second gets to the food, where we're promoting greater food security, addressing the issues, nutrition and hunger relief through the maintenance of educational and residential garden beds, with mentoring and support. So you can see a few pictures from some of our big events over the last 5 years down there. So very deliberately a collaborative project. And here are some of the programs and impacts we've seen through the program over the last 5 years. First, we've installed 80 residential and educational garden beds and given mentor support. So that's matching new gardeners with experienced gardeners so that they can have a successful first growing season. Second, we've helped revitalize 2 community gardens, Holloway Hope, which you can see in full bloom in that picture down there, and NEXUS Community Gardens on the edge of Xavier campus, which I'll get to in a second. And then through those projects, we've engaged hundreds of volunteers and neighbors to come together, and we've organized, by this point, dozens of events, potlucks, garden tours, plant sales, service days. It's really become a active and community engaged project. We thought though, rather than just throw out the numbers here, we would share a video with one of our core gardeners, a member of our leadership team and our community liaison with the community council, Melanie Moon. So this is just a short excerpt from an interview we did with her. Can you all see that?
Well, I remember a representative from Bellarmine Chapel came to our Evanston Community Council meeting and was talking about Precious Better. And I had a garden bed put in my yard. And then they came back saying that they needed a liaison, someone to be between Bellarmine and the community members. So they could tell me if they wanted a garden bed, and then I would tell Bellarmine that they wanted a garden bed in their yard. And I believe that the Freshest Better is an outgrowth of that work, the social justice and racial justice sort of is the foundation, and Freshest Better sort of sprung up from that. They were looking for a way to reach out to their neighbors. The biggest impact is the people. It's just been amazing how Bellarmine parishioners have reached out to members of the Evanston community with genuine love and concern, and that's just powerful. So, I mean, it's great to have a garden. It's great when the food grows and insects don't get it and I can eat it. But aside from that, I think the most powerful thing is the friends that I have made at Bellarmine. And then it's also brought together members of our community, fellow gardeners right here in Evanston that we never would have known. You know, we get so siloed in our communities now, in our neighborhoods. You don't know who your next door neighbor is. But this has enabled us to get to know one another, having gardens in our yards, having food growing. Evanston is a desert, a food desert. But we have gardens where we have food growing in our yards. All we have to do is go out and pick it. And so that's another major impact that this program has had for us. But since becoming involved with Freshest Better, I have really gotten involved with Bellarmine Chapel Social Justice Ministry. I know this may sound syrupy, sweet, and corny, but God can touch the hearts of people to do good. That's what I've learned. Strangers, total strangers, people that I did not even know existed, and now they are friends, neighbors that I did not have a relationship with before, now I do. And I believe that God is truly working in this ministry. It is ministry. And despite the division of our nation and communities, the segregation that we still experience today, God touches the hearts of people to do good. And he has proven himself true in that. That's the bottom line. We are supposed to love one another as brothers and sisters. And I believe that Bellarmine and this program have made that quite evident. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
You're still muted, Tim.
I know how to use Zoom. Is it back to full screen for everyone? Awesome. Yeah, so Melanie's been a real blessing to the project, and so have so many other neighbors. Melanie goes to a local AME church there and is clearly a person of deep faith. So these kinds of ecumenical partnerships have really been another way this project's just blossomed and grown. So I mentioned 2 community gardens as being revitalized, Holloway Hope, and then this one, the NEXUS Garden. The projects, the residential beds that Melanie talked a lot about have been huge community parish partnerships, and Xavier's been involved in that, offering us 20 students for a volunteer day, even interns like Claire and Mickey. But this project is the space where Xavier's been the most involved. It's on the edge of Xavier's campus. It's around 70 garden beds. 25 of those are rented to neighbors in the community, students, faculty, and then the other 50-ish are grown for donation to area food pantries and in collaboration with a local Black-owned nonprofit called Brick Gardens. So and you can see the overlap in the 2 missions here, but this is the specific mission for that. And you can see how collaboration is really at the heart of it, to serve as a collaborative growing space that brings together diverse stakeholders from Bellarmine, Xavier, and neighboring communities, again, to grow genuinely transformative relationships, address food insecurity and hunger, and promote sustainability. And then you can see here the vision statement. It gets to the culture of encounter that Francis is always talking about, right? To grow a culture of encounter and mutual belonging amongst all participants, centered on organic gardening, healthy food, and the sacred connections we have to one another and the earth. So Bellarmine just took over management of this project in collaboration with the university last year. And it's grown remarkably in that time. Last year with COVID, there were maybe 6 active gardeners. Now every bed is fully activated and growing. And then finally, I want to, before we shift over to the actual process of engaging stakeholders, I want to sort of identify these 4 focus areas that really have come to define what this project is about and has been the grounds for building partnerships with others. They all come out of this quote from Laudato Si: everything is interconnected, and genuine care for our lives and our relationships with nature are inseparable from fraternity, justice, and faithfulness to others. So you'll see that in here, right? First is sustainability. This is how we address the climate change. Mickey started us out with, it's the big framing, right? The impacts of industrial agriculture that are challenged and undermined by local agriculture and organic growing practices. This kind of local sustainable agriculture is listed in the 100 Solutions in the Drawdown book, if anyone's familiar with that. So we engage in those practices with all our gardeners, and we try to create a sort of sustainable ecosystem up there. We keep bees, we have large beds of native perennials. So we're trying to make this space as alive as it can be on a university campus in an urban area. The second is food security. This addresses the food deserts that Mickey covered, the food insecurity that so many residents are experiencing. We do that through the donations to the food pantries, and we do it by empowering families to have control of their own food choices. Melanie mentioned that in her video, that though we're in a food desert, I have some control over what's happening in my eating choices. With the NEXUS project especially, I'm happy to report we donated almost 1,000 pounds of produce this past growing season, and I hope next year we're able to do even more. The third one here is community building. And this gets to the need for the collective action. So not just having empowered people on the individual level, but empowering us on the collective level to act, to impact systems. So it's bringing together the parish members from Bellarmine, students like Claire and Mickey, Brick Gardens, the nonprofit I mentioned, and the members of the Evanston community. It's really there to increase the social capital and create new possibilities for change in Evanston. And then lastly is the faith and justice goal. This is where we're combating the systemic racism that Mickey was talking about, environmental racism that food systems are integrated into. And this is where the culture of encounter challenges that. It challenges us, all of us, to rethink relationships and to build new relationships that undermine the racism, both within ourselves and within our systems. So with that, I'll hand things over to Claire, who is going to show us how these goals, these focus areas played out in a very specific and process-oriented way.
Yeah, so as Tim mentioned, the Fresh is Better model really intentionally is collaborative. And we believe that a collaborative model flows really organically into coalition building. We want to emphasize coalition building specifically because we believe in the power of collective action for making change that is truly equitable, not top down. And collective action, as you can see here, mobilizes a group of people to address a common issue or concern and to enable them to take action on that issue. And what's really unique here is that groups with independent goals are able to recognize and mobilize around their common interests while also maintaining their independent values and independent goals. Coalition building also resists oppressive structures because it is non-hierarchical. It can utilize a horizontal model where all the different groups have a say in the decision-making process. And it also allows each group or individual participating to really remain oriented around their own values. And this structure, which is so equitable and values oriented, we believe is also a response of faith that's in line with Bellarmine's Jesuit mission. In his address to the Third World Meeting of Popular Movements, Pope Francis wrote that we must invest in the bridge project of people's human development instead of the wall project of money. And coalition building really relies on the development of one-on-one, person-to-person relationships that respect the values and the dignity of all the people involved. As the saying goes, you know, movements are built at the pace of trust. And we want to really emphasize, as Tim was talking about, that culture of encounter. In order to mobilize for coalition building, you must begin first by defining your goals. So what are the needs or issues that you want to address in your community? You can also do an assets-based approach like Tim was talking about was utilized for the Fresh is Better project. Your vision should be built around accomplishing those goals. And once you have your goals set out, you can begin to build a base of supporters and allies who share at least one or maybe all of your goals and begin to generate some power together and make change happen. The power of coalition building really centers around that ability to draw diverse perspectives and groups together around their common interests. And it's not just about accomplishing the goals that are set out, but also really developing those relationships between the groups that are involved. So in the Fresh is Better project, there are 3 central relationships at play here. So the relationship between the parish and the wider community, the relationship between the university and the parish, and the relationship between the university and the wider community. A way to begin outlining the key players and relationships if you're going to think about building a coalition or just doing some stakeholder analysis is by building a stakeholder map. So you can begin by listing your goals and then identifying who are the key players in this project. So this is going to include you and the group that you're a part of, and the others that are most centrally directly involved. So the key players for Fresh is Better, for example, would be the Bellarmine Chapel community, the Evanston community, and then the Xavier University community. It's also really important to pay attention to the relationships between these key players. So you want to notice what are the relationships that already exist between these groups that you might be able to utilize, as well as thinking about what are relationships that you want to strengthen, and identifying those as well. And once you've identified your central players, you can start to expand your network more widely. So ask questions like who else in the community might share some or all of these goals, or what are the relationships that you already have external to these three groups that might benefit this effort. It's also helpful to list which of your goals are shared with the groups, individuals, or organizations that you're creating in your list. So that when you reach out to these groups to build or to develop further relationships, you can also tailor your message when you're talking to them around the shared goals that you have in common, and hopefully better enlist them into your project. So now we're looking at this very complicated map, but I'm kind of break it down a little bit. So this is an example of a stakeholder map. It's just one way of identifying stakeholders in your group or in your community. And so this is an example utilizing the Fresh is Better project just as an example. So you can see at the center, we've got the main project, which is Fresh is Better. And it's surrounded by the central goals that it was designed to achieve. So sustainability, food security, community building, faith and justice, and they've all got their own unique color. And then we've identified the key players, as I said before. So Bellarmine Chapel, the Evanston community, and the Xavier University community. We also note the type of relationship between each of these groups. So for example, student involvement in the Fresh is Better program and in the NEXUS Gardens has been an opportunity to strengthen the parish-university relationship, which you can see connecting those two organizations. The next step is then to identify who are the relevant subgroups or related organizations for each of the key players, which you can see kind of stemming off in the green lines. For larger institutions like a university like Xavier, this is especially important for narrowing down specifically which individuals or which programs you want to be in conversation with. If you just kind of list Xavier University, there's 6,000, 7,000 people who are associated with that. And you want to narrow down to specifically who are the groups and the people that you want to be in conversation and in relationship with. So for example, we identified under the service learning programs at Xavier, the Community Building Institute, because of their work with the Evanston community. We also identified under student clubs and working groups, the Sustainability Club, because of their interest in sustainability goals. This is also an opportunity to utilize the existing relationships that you have. So we made note of a few individuals that occupy two spaces. You can see with the blue dotted lines in between Evanston and Bellarmine, parishioners and residents who are both residents of Evanston and attend church at Bellarmine or are a part of the Bellarmine parish community. That's a really easy way to tap into both of those communities and facilitate relationships there. We also have the social mission interns between Xavier University and Bellarmine Chapel. So this is me and Mickey. We have our foot in both of those camps and are able to really easily facilitate relationships between the two groups. Then we went through and identified which of our 4 goals are shared by each group and each subgroup listed. So this is what all the really confusing little circles, colored circles are around the edges. So you can see, for example, stemming off of the Evanston community, we have one of the key partners of this project, which was the Evanston Community Council. The council has the shared goals with Bellarmine of community building and of food security. So you can see that marked by the blue and the purple circles. And this map, is just an example of a type of stakeholder analysis that we're using to illustrate the Fresh is Better project. You don't have to have a map that looks like this with a series of color-coded circles, but it is a helpful tool for visually and mentally mapping the groups and the relationships that you might want to bring into your coalition. You can ask the same questions and employ the same relationship-based strategies just by typing up or handwriting a list. The stakeholder map is just supposed to be a guide for one type of way to begin stakeholder analysis. Now that we've broken down the process of stakeholder analysis a little bit, we'd like to invite you to take a few minutes, just 3 minutes, to reflect on the presentation. And if you have a project in mind that you're a part of or an idea that you have, we'd invite you to also begin developing your own stakeholder map if that's something that you feel like would be useful to you. So I'll drop in the chat. We have a little handout with some instructions and another visual of the stakeholder map that I just showed. And we'll take just a few minutes for centering and for reflection. And then if you'd like to begin brainstorming a stakeholder map, we'd invite you to do that during this time as well.
And so then after 3 minutes, we'll talk about the questions together, but spend a little time working through your own project ideas so you have something to bring to the discussion. And I will also say, I forgot to say this earlier, today is World Food Day for the United Nations. So you're also participating in that by watching this presentation. I'll keep that up there till we move to discussion so people can see it. I think that was 2 minutes, but did people get to write down a few things? Are they on their hearts and minds? What did people come up with? Anyone have a project that they came to this already with in mind that this might be useful for, or anything that just generated for people in terms of ideas? Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Is it not?
Yeah, so I guess a project that I've kind of been trying to get, I know other people at my high school have also been trying to like get implemented, is like a kind of community composting program. And I guess just to start off, like I really only got to the first bullet point, but like listing the goals, it was to kind of reduce the food waste at lunch, like in the lunchroom, rather than everything just going in the garbage. Like being able to siphon out the stuff that's still valuable, and then also be able to put that out into like we can give it to gardens in the community or other gardens that the school is affiliated with, and give them like nourishing compost and soil. So we're reducing our impact and also giving something to other people.
This is a beautiful idea. So I apparently cut you off too early, but if you had to start thinking about who some of the stakeholders might be, who comes to mind for you?
I guess the stakeholders would break down to like the students being a part of it and really finding value in it and wanting to not just chuck everything in the garbage, be like, okay, we're gonna separate it out at our lunch tables and then put the food that can be composted in the compost bin, put other things in the recycling and stuff like that. And then like school administration to like help facilitate that. And then people in the community who would want to receive that and put it into use in the gardens, or who would want to like work in the gardens to make sure that the compost actually had somewhere to go.
That's great. And I like that you're thinking of the sort of the power analysis there, right? Like who's the decision maker in the administration that would decide if this happens or not, and then where's the end, where's it going, right? So you don't have just a pile of compost at school that nobody knows what to do with. You're on track. And hopefully these circles mind mapping idea will help just make a visual that you can get others on board with.
Yeah.
What about others? Did others start thinking about? Or Claire, did you want, I know you're actually starting a compost system on Xavier's campus. Do you want to respond to any?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome idea. One encouragement I would say is to think about like what we use to construct. We have just a really rudimentary 3-bin system, but we used wood pallets from the physical plant, the maintenance group on campus. And I'm sure that you have something similar on your high school's campus. So I would think about utilizing what are the resources, and also being in conversation with your maintenance team or your physical plant, because they're going to be really, really instrumental in helping you facilitate this as well. So I would keep your eyes out for them too.
That's a good point. And they're also likely the ones who are going to worry about rats coming. So you can assure them you'll be fine if people are using it properly. Did others have a project in mind, or get to think about their goals, or even their stakeholders, or just have questions about the process generally?
I reflected a bit on a project that I'm working on with some other students on campus. It's a student task force focused on mobilizing around climate action. We have a climate action plan on campus that we're not really being held account to. We're not hitting our goals. So I've been trying to get together with some other students and figure out what kind of coalition can we build to make some substantial change on campus. So I was thinking about the goals of sustainability and justice that are involved with any kind of climate work. And then also thinking about enlisting other groups like Bellarmine's Healthy Earth team. There's a lot of connections from the Fresh is Better model that I think we can also draw on for the student task force, but also thinking about what are the specific clubs on campus that are oriented around sustainability or environment that I might be able to get students from those groups involved in our group as well. And what are the faculty that are teaching sustainability related courses that we might be able to draw on for resources.
Thanks, Claire. That's awesome. You're already transferring skills. I like it. Don't want to put anyone on the spot, but Ben or Marianne or John, do you have any reflections from what you heard?
I was also thinking about composting because I know a lot of my friends, especially, like they'll get like food and then they won't eat it all, and then I see them like throwing away their food every lunch, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot of food. You could like that could have been like composted and that could have made like good soil for like gardens and stuff. But it's really sad seeing them not like throwing away so much food during lunch. I see a lot of people doing it too. And so I was also thinking about composting, but I hadn't put any like thought to it. Yeah.
That's great, Marianne, though. And I think isn't something like 40% of food wasted? Is that, I think that's the number I've heard. So yeah, doing our part to reduce that is important. And Marianne, I know and Michael, there's a number of high schools that, I don't know if they're in the Jesuit network, but they've gone zero waste. Like they're trying to create zero waste through their cafeterias. So if you Google that, I would imagine there's a lot of resources out there at this point. There's a network, Claire, you're part of too, right? To reduce waste in cafeterias.
Yeah, I know it's for colleges. I don't know, there might be high school resources as well. It's called the Food Recovery Network, and it's oriented around rescuing food waste from the dining. So you can't use food that people have already taken and put on their lunch tray or whatever, but you can use any food that the cafeteria makes that no students have picked up. And then what happens here is that students rescue that food, they pick it up and they take it in their cars to local food kitchens or shelters that are accepting food donations. I'll go ahead and I can drop the website link for that in the chat.
I think just like I think the video that you guys played, like I think this is like a really cool idea, and like what she said was God can touch the hearts of people to do good. I think it's just like a really important thing to just like keep in mind. I think it's like a really great idea of what you guys are doing for your community, the people around you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for saying that. And yeah, it's definitely been done, the Jesuit model for and with others. I would put the emphasis on the with in this program. Bellarmine is a partner in a collaborative, like Claire outlined. It's a coalition of organizations that make this happen. It's not Bellarmine just going in and saying, we have lots of Jesuit-y resources, let's save the day. It's been like Melanie shared, a work of God working through all partners involved, and like Mickey shared, breaking down the barriers, I think, that keep us from realizing we belong to one another. Mickey or Claire, did you have more thoughts you wanted to share? No pressure.
I'll just offer one comment. That somebody who works in, I work at a Catholic high school here in Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's Xavier High School, but it's the diocesan high school. But for those people who work in K through 12, especially those people working in high schools, you know, there can be a lot of value in trying to reach out to a faculty member. You know, I think that faculty can be a great advocate for you and kind of assist you with navigating to, I think in particular, like in the science department or an environmental science class or an environmental science teacher or somebody who there might be an environmental club already at your school to be able to tap into that, because I think one of the other pieces is just the educational piece of, you know, what is available here and understanding science, earth science, environmental science. And when you can start to make some of those academic connections, it allows you to bring in a whole different group of people and tapping into a different set of goals. And then finally, then that also then allows for some sustainability, that the program will continue after you graduate. And so that it has a home, whether it's in a department or a committee, to really be able to kind of continue the work after you get it up and go. So just some reflections.
Yeah, thank you for naming that, John. I'd said Nexus had been fallow for a number of years. It wasn't housed anywhere. It was free floating. And so when the students who were most interested left, that's why it went fallow. So now that it's housed in Bellarmine and it has that endurance, right? Sustainability over time. So even if none of the three of us are here anymore, it persists. So thank you for naming that. I put a link to just the website for Fresh is Better on Bellarmine's page. And I'm a little bit old, so I don't know how Instagram works, but if I put the link to our Instagram in there too, if the interns manage Instagram. But if you're interested in seeing more pictures and following a project, that's the Instagram for it. Xavier Urban Farm.
I'll also share the slides that we use from this presentation. And there's some resources that we used on there and also our contact information for Marianne and Michael. If you're interested in composting stuff, there's resources that I've put together from our effort to get composting going on this campus that I would be totally happy to share. You can send me an email. I would love to be in conversation or share those resources with you.
There's the email addresses up there. Awesome. Any last questions? You know, for some of you, it's been a long day of presentations, so we'll end a few minutes early.
Can I just say thanks? And also I'll brag and say I'm Claire's mom, but I'll also say that I work at St. Norbert College and we had a garden effort, and it was a few students who were very involved like yours, and then they graduated. And so I was thrilled at how much this is thriving and that this was just so helpful for me thinking, again, maybe this could resurface in a way at St. Norbert. That could be, I think the collaboration piece is the key. To make it more sustainable and to really involve different stakeholders so it can, as you were saying too, just about lasting over the long haul. But this was inspiring to me as in that capacity too at St. Norbert College. So thanks.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
And the last thing I want to add is I think it's important for us, especially as a social mission team, to, yes, we come up with solutions of like community gardening, but also looking at the underlying issues. What's the systemic reason why this is happening? And how do we also talk with our community groups and talk about how we can fix that systemic issue? So keeping that in mind of, I get you guys are wanting to do composting, but for us, it's more about the food deserts and the food insecurity. So what are the issues that lead to the food deserts and food insecurity?
Thanks. I think that's important. And we didn't touch on this at all, but Bellarmine's also a member of Faith in Action Network here called Amos Project that is doing right now doing listening sessions with groups of our gardeners to try and understand exactly that, the deeper systemic issues, primarily around racism and economic justice that lead to this being a food desert community. So it's always a multi-pronged approach. And I appreciate you naming that, Mickey. Awesome, thank you all. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Michael,
do you have a last question, Michael? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just going into like the advocacy meetings with like the congressional representatives and things like that. How from like a legal approach, what do you suggest, like going into a meeting like that and saying, using your organization or something similar as like a motivation to get laws passed or something like that, to get legal change, not just from like a college campus or like a community point of view, but like a legal point of view?
Yeah, so Claire and Mickey, feel free to answer too, but I think projects like this provide the stories that give some emotional heart to the issues we're talking about and organizing, right? They put faces and lived reality, like Melanie's story in her video. It takes us from the realm of facts and numbers to the realm of heart. And I think when you're doing lobbying visits, they can look up the numbers and facts. They have aides who can do that. It's good to provide them too, so they have a fact sheet, but it's really the story, the impact that will make others' hearts turn as well, right?
Sorry, adding on to that, like I think it's very important to definitely have like that heartfelt, but also like Tim said, have the numbers, but also saying, okay, this isn't just happening in this area, but it's also happening here, here, and here. So they can say that, okay, well, it is a problem here, but it's also a problem in other places too.
And I think building off of Mickey's point, there's a lot, and I think what this project does well is highlight the intersections between different issues. So climate change is not just an environmental issue, right? Like Mickey was saying, it has all these disproportionate impacts on existing injustices, economic injustices, and especially racial injustice. So there's a way to, I think, shift your narrative when you're talking to whatever representative you're talking to. If you have an awareness of what type of issues they are usually moved on, or what their key stances are, you can address, racial justice, and you can address sustainability and climate change issues through whatever issue it is that appeals most to them. So recognizing all the intersections that are at play there.
And as much as you can, tell stories of in districts. So don't tell our story, tell a story in district, because they care about their voters, and if you are one of them, or will be, I don't know if you're 18 yet, but will be one of them. Nice. When are you all advocating? It's in November, right?
Ours are on Monday. We have Zoom meetings because we're doing awesome. Like the all virtual piece of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good luck. Thank you for representing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all for being with us very much.